All right, welcome back to the AMP podcast. Today I have a very special guest, and we've been talking about doing this podcast now, getting it launched, I would say for about 5 or 6 years, maybe even longer.
Right.
And Coach John Buck sitting across from me, my good friend, colleague, former client, and now someone that we work with yearly for the last 5 or 7 years now. The years are really adding up.
They're rolling by.
But Coach Buck is someone that I really admire in his role. He is not only the head basketball coach at Long Island Lutheran Academy, but he is also the head of schools, which is kind of like the CEO of a corporation. So I think we're going to get a lot of really cool insight on not just the athletic side, but also kind of the business side of the school and being a leader. And I think that's something that I look to Coach Buck for in his leadership and what he's been able to build. When we talk about core values, when we talk about mindset, obviously athletic achievement, but Coach Buck is someone that I always look toward through the years of developing our relationship, our friendship, and I really hold that special part in our partnership through working with both the boys and the girls basketball teams, being able to help you guys win championships over the years, and get to the point where you are now one of the best, if not the best programs, not only boys, but girls as well, basketball programs in the nation, which is unbelievable to think how far that school has come, and how New York basketball has changed drastically since we were back in high school and college. But again, Coach Buck, he's got such a wealth of knowledge of not only leadership, but success in both in spiritual success, in business, in leading young men, and also leading other men and other women in being the head of school and also being the head coach with a lot of assistant coaches that help you as well. So I'm so excited for this conversation. I think once again, it was something that, Coach Buck was like, all right, when are we doing this thing? When are we going to finally do this podcast? So
we're here.
Once again, thank you for being here and thank you for helping us launch the AMP podcast and, something that we're hopefully going to be continuing and doing a lot of and giving some insight on the day-to-day of what we do here at AMP and the special people that we get to work with and the special athletes that we get to be a part of their journey and their development over the years. So once again, thank you, Coach Buck, for being here and welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me, TJ. We're here. Years
Absolutely.
In the making. So thankful to have this opportunity to connect and reflect. And honestly, as you're sharing all that, it's humbling, but just a feeling of gratitude coming over, just all the opportunities that I've been blessed with, the people that I've gotten to connect with, you being one of those key people and being able to work with AMP here, just really thankful. Absolutely.
One thing I always kind of am curious about is when you meet somebody that you don't know, and like, explain to me, like, how do you explain what you do and what and who you are? What's the answer? Like, hey, John, what do you do? What do you do every day?
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of have 3 buckets. I have my role as head of school, which, as you said, is essentially the CEO of LuHi.
Yep.
I have head basketball coach, which, when you compete at the level we do, is not just a part-time, fun little thing. It's highly invested. And then I have my wife and 3 children.
Absolutely.
And anything outside those 3 buckets, I say no a lot to, just so I can try to be the best I can at those 3. And so, a lot of leadership, a lot of vision in all 3 of those areas, needing to be kind of consistent and focused in where we want to go and how we behave in all those different, areas of life. I can go down and kind of explain each one, but I guess if I just sum it all up, I guess I've been charged with leading and creating a vision and transferring belief. I always think leadership is a transfer of belief.
Absolutely.
And so having that belief and giving it off to other people to carry that forward and accomplish something is what I try to do. And
I think you do an amazing job. And I think that is one of the toughest things for a leader. Me being the leader of AMP for 13 years now, and being able to have that vision in your mind for what something could be. And I want to kind of, dig a little bit deeper deeper on that and like what your vision was when you first started, and how that came to fruition and how that's coming to fruition, which is a really cool, and I'm really, gracious to be a part of that process as well. The strategic planning and the visioning, and again, I've just gained so much myself and been able to take those experiences and bring that back to the team and ways to teach, how to lead yourself better first and foremost. Yeah. Then, how to create those visions and then put someone else in that same vision and see that vision together, walking the path together instead of just dictating and saying, well, this is what has to happen because I said so.
Right.
If people can see that vision and if you can show them that vision, then they will, if they're compelled, they will also walk that same path with you and sometimes help you even more than you could have imagined.
Right.
And I think that's when the collaboration and the synergy really starts to take off and the momentum. And I think I've been able to kind of hop on the LuHi bandwagon at a really, really cool time. And it brings me back, even prior to working with the basketball team, you were a client. You were here as one of our first
6 a.m.
One of our first 6 a.m. clients
Yeah.
at AMP when we had our previous location. And I just, I always cherish those moments after sessions. We talk about life, talk about, family, talk about politics, whatever it might have been. But, those things always stayed with me, and that friendship is something that we were able to curate in that sense. And then there was that day that I remember driving home, and I think it was March of 2019, and you had given me a call and said, Coach, listen, we're struggling as a team right now. You guys have a unique challenge, or at least back then you did, where you were playing this national schedule, being a local New York school, but playing teams from all over the nation, even back in 2017, 2018, a powerhouse, in the making. And the previous year, you had kind of struggled because your season, at the time being an independent school, ended a month prior to just about every other team in New York.
So 4 or 5 week break.
So you had this 4 or 5 week break where all of these teams are battling it out in the city, battling it out in the state, and playing and staying fresh and staying ready, where you guys, your season was over. So what do you do in between that 4 or 5 week period of time? And I think part of the thing that you had brought to me was, I think we were just gassing out because we hadn't had that competitiveness that throughout that entire period of time, where these other teams were able to continually have their practice schedule, their games, playing 1 or 2 games a week, keeping that momentum.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about that specific, really time when we started to really collaborate and work together.
Yeah.
And that special run that we were able to experience together up in Glens Falls, New York. Probably was that the last Federation State Championship or one of?
It was one of the last because in 2019, after that one, COVID canceled the 2020 and 21. They didn't get it together for 22. They brought it back in 23, which we won, and you were a part of as well in that locker room.
That's right. 23.
And then they canceled it after that.
Yes. So you were the last two Federation champions
for the AA level.
4 years in between.
Yeah. But I remember that process. And, we just really, every time we went up and played after essentially a month off, our guys were just saying, Coach, I'm struggling to just breathe out here. I'm so gassed. And it would really blow my mind because we'd been working on conditioning the whole month. It wasn't like we were sitting around. We were doing a ton of running. And I'll never forget, we still use that skill. It was really like controlling your breath.
Yes.
And slowing your heart rate down.
Yes.
And being intentional about that. And we gave the guys those skills.
Yes.
You guys gave the guys those skills. And then we went up and had the biggest margin of victory ever in that tournament, beating South Shore with Kadari Richmond.
Yes, who's in the
really
NBA
good players.
today. Just saw his highlights last night. Yeah.
And then also, Christ the King, a story program from the city. And so, just that skill where I never would have known that, the science behind it, partnering with AMP, partnering with you, really set us up for success. And it's just, as you share kind of our paralleled paths, it's been really interesting to walk side by side with AMP in a lot of ways in my role at LuHi, both as a essentially business owner with you, and then LuHi and AMP, new facility here.
Yep.
New facility over at LuHi.
Yes.
Some of the challenges personnel-wise that we're always navigating. We'd always bounce ideas off each other.
100%.
So I can't think of one more person, TJ, over the course of my leadership that I've been kind of seeing those parallels and having an idea to bounce off of than you. And even if it goes a couple months where we don't have anything to share, it can snap right back into it because of the similar opportunities and challenges that we've had here at LuHi and AMP.
I appreciate that. I really do. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the amount of books that we've shared over time, those conversations, and that's part of why we're like, we got to get this on film. We got to, at least, hopefully we inspire others and help others, through that are on that same path and kind of, understand a little bit of the behind the scenes that goes on. That sometimes it's, it's like you're not 100% sure as to like how everything comes to fruition and how everything runs on time. But there's a lot of work and a lot of thought that goes into that, and a lot of days that you don't always feel great about what you're doing, about whether it's going to come out right and whether your vision's going to be there. Yeah. But I do remember specifically the conversation, and it's like funny when you have these like moments in time. Like I remember I was in the car sitting in some traffic driving back home, and we were talking about breath work. We were talking about actually I was remembering my work with some of our MMA fighters, and in between rounds, the goal was to get the heart rate back to as low as possible within a minute. Yeah. To then have that energy and go and pop right back. And the few things that I remember throughout that time, we talked a lot about hydration and fueling. So we talked a lot about drinking things like coconut water, fruit that had a lot of vitamins and minerals and fructose that kind of was an immediate kind of energy, where I think a lot of guys we were packing up on bananas and coconut water throughout that whole time that we were up in Glens Falls. And then we went through the breath work, which part of that was something we call RPR, Reflexive Performance Reset, that at the time, was a brand new idea in strength and conditioning that we still use to this day. And it was kind of like a funny routine that we would kind of, they call them wake up drills. Yeah. So, we have all these kids, and they were the thing about, again, like the thing that gives me goosebumps, day one, I know you for years already. Day one, LuHi walks in the doors at AMP. And when I tell you the high positive energy that I had never felt before, and I've worked in professional sports. I've worked with, professional fighters, with basketball players, NBA and Major League Baseball players. And it was like the first time that I had seen a sense of togetherness that I had never felt before. And it was really incredible. No matter what, their trust in us as AMP, because of your trust in us, that exuded right into the way that they worked. And I think, obviously we've been through a few years now. We've had a bunch of special players come through, but there was something about that team, that 2018-2019 season, that was really just the positive energy was just incredible. Yeah. What are some of the things that you have been able? How do you curate those types of feeling? And obviously that is like looking at the tip of the iceberg. Like that is the goal. The goal is, when I look at culture and community, when we talk about our core values, that it's sometimes intangible, but the fact that they're smiling, they're happy, hands around shoulders, like. Yeah. Again, when I think about that team, I think of just being a unit, being a one unit that was positive energy. Their mantras, right? Was it 25 and 2? Yeah. Was that the mantra? Yes. So tell me a little bit about, like, that's curated. I know that starts with the recruiting process. That starts with all the way back from day one. So what are some of the things that you've realized in yourself that you've developed that skill of creating that community and that togetherness?
Yeah, for sure. And I know here at AMP, there's core values that you guys live out, and they're not just on the wall, but they're really part of how people behave and act. Yep. I think I had core values without actually explicitly stating them at that time. And it was really at the end of the next year where I was able to get the guys together and help me list those out. But what I did the next year to get those core values is ask them to give me 5 words to describe the program. And it was actually right when COVID hit, so we got on a Zoom and we're trying to make the most out of that time. We had gone on a great run the year you're speaking about. Yes. And then the next year was also very special too. We beat Sierra Canyon.
That's right.
We beat Patrick School. And then COVID hit, took our chance at another federation away, and we got on a Zoom, and I had all the guys give me 5 words, all the coaches, managers. I wrote them down on a sheet. It was about 100 different words to describe our culture. And I started to group them in terms of theme.
Yep.
And those 5 themes that we took out are still our core values to this day. And so when I look at young men who want to become part of our program with their families, I ask the hard questions of them and myself of, do they align with this? And I have questions for each of them. And if they don't, I don't try to force it to work. We've had, quite frankly, future NBA players come to LuHi to ask about playing. And I've said, I don't know if this is really going to work. And I'd rather go with individuals that can really become part of that culture and want to be part of it, to create that unit, that togetherness. I mean, you see it in sports teams every single year. Some teams have it, and then just some teams don't.
Right.
And that it is really hard to measure, but we all know it, we all feel it, and the engagement and the success when it's there is undeniable.
Absolutely. What are those 5?
Yeah, for us, again, these were not what does Coach Buck want on a piece of paper. It was really getting it back from the kids. And the first one's integrity. I think when we hear integrity, we think, okay, don't lie. That's part of it. But integrity is kind of like you're reliable and you deliver on what you say you're going to deliver.
Yes.
So like, a gym, if there's an integrity around it, the clients know what they get when they come in. They can trust the people. The equipment's where it's supposed to. It's just multi-layered.
Absolutely.
And so the integrity piece is, I don't want anyone thinking LuHi basketball and thinking, what's really going on over there? There's like, is there solidity in like the base of who they are and
That's
what they do?
That's a great word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it a word? I think I might have made it up.
You just made it up. It's awesome.
But it's just got to really have like roots,
Yes,
and so that
foundation,
integrity
of
is
course.
really it's just an important part of my life, and I think it's carried over to the program. Like we just got to be really genuine and honest in who we are.
Yes.
The second one's respect. I think sports nowadays, especially with social media, celebrates a lot of disrespect.
Yes.
I think it's funny, when someone, does something to someone and everyone laughs and points, but
The TikTok, culture of, clips and that type of stuff.
yeah, but just kind of like my core beliefs as a human is that's really not what we're all doing this for. I'm not coaching to disrespect another coach.
No.
I'm not trying to get my players to be great so that they can disrespect other people.
Right.
My college coach, who has since passed, unfortunately, Skip Prosser, used to say the greatest respect you can give your opponent is kicking their butt, essentially. Showing up, giving it everything you got, and then just dominating. It's not, pointing fingers and all that kind of stuff. So we really try to stay away from like the disrespect stuff. I really have gotten so much better over my career in working with officials, I believe.
Yep.
Haven't picked up
That's always
a
tough.
tech. Yeah, especially as a young person wanting to win.
Yep.
But there's just a mutual respect. That goes from me to players.
Yes.
Players to coaches. I survey the players at the end of every year and ask them about each person on the staff anonymously. And one of the questions is, I respect the way this coach speaks and interacts with me. I want to know that. I want to know that the players feel respected,
Right.
and vice versa. The third one's humility. You come to a place like LuHi, you got to know it's not just about you.
Yes.
We've had guys go to the NBA. We've had guys win Player of the Year, go to Power 5 schools, all that, it's going to happen. But if I sense that it's really about me first, then the team can kind of get the leftovers. It's just not a good feeling of trying to coach someone and be part of a team sport.
Yes.
So humility, if you average 15 a game at LuHi, you are crushing it. And a lot of these guys will come to us after averaging 25, sometimes 30 points at their public school or something like that. And
Big fish in a small pond.
Yeah,
Yep.
needing to buy into something bigger than yourself because, we've been able to do some really special things as a team.
Absolutely.
And so you have to buy into the humility piece. Those first 3, I like to say, are a lot of like parent instilled. It's really hard for me to change that once someone's in high school. So I'm kind of
100%.
relying on the family to have instilled that stuff because I've unfortunately tried to change some of those things in people, and it doesn't really work.
Yeah, and
They
a
have to
couple of
believe
years
that.
is a short period of time. A lot of the times when you're getting guys that are, sophomores or juniors, you don't have all that much time with them. If you had them from 7th grade, maybe there's a difference
Yep.
that you can make. But yeah, especially, they're almost a fully formed adult by the time they walk through your door.
There's a lot of studies that say your core beliefs as a human are really set pretty strongly by 12.
Yeah.
And so as a parent, I know that's motivating. It's
Absolutely.
like my time is short on all
Yes.
this. And so I rely a lot on the families for those 3. And then the last 2, I like to say I can do more work with. Because it's a part of our growth and process as athletes, as humans. It's passion and resilience.
Awesome.
Passion is that undeniable effort, energy, and excitement for what we do. I don't want any college coach, anyone to come into a gym, a fan to watch us play and say, they're kind of into this.
Right.
No, I love when people say, your bench is the best bench I've
It's
ever
not
seen.
what you do, it's the way you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it carries over, right? And so
Right.
every single day, finding that passion. Obviously, some days you're feeling 10 out of 10. Some days you're feeling more 6 or 7 out of 10. But we have to live by that core value of passion and just give our absolute best and have that energy for what we're doing.
Love that.
A lot of kids need to learn that. They need to understand how to play as hard as they really need to. They need to understand how emotional they have to be in supporting their teammates. We'll show clips of the bench during a play. If some guy makes a 3 and you're just sitting there, that's just unacceptable. Like,
Right.
we need to be up. We need to be clapping.
And I
we
think
need
you're
to be-
doing an amazing job of, there's something about that feeling. It's an energy. It's infectious, but it's really hard to pinpoint. So when you're actually looking at film, it's like body language, it's smiling, it's being engaged. Like, those are really tough things to teach.
Yeah.
Without showing.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing a great job. I think, as coaches, we have that same thing. It's like, what is an energetic coach?
Yeah.
What is what is the feeling? Feeling is really hard to pinpoint.
Yep.
So when you walk in here, there's something about, it's the music, it's the energy, it's the coaches moving with a purpose,
Right.
high-fiving, shaking hands, encouraging, motivating. That's the feeling. That's the feeling I got when you guys walked in the room.
Right.
Yeah,
and the only way we can do it is just like try to show behaviors, right? Those Steve Nash led the NBA in touches one year.
Yep.
Like how many high fives
Yes,
he's giving.
yes.
Those are the types of things you want to try to teach and instill.
Absolutely.
That last one is resilience. I think it's maybe, I don't like to grade them on terms of importance, but we know in life that resilience is just so important. People see an amp, they see a LuHi, and they say, wow, like, you guys have just probably always just had a road like this.
Oh yeah, straight line.
I mean, it's just like the furthest thing from it.
Right.
I mean, days where it's like, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
Right.
Days when it's like, this just feels like a failure. The amount of times that you're going to get knocked down in a journey, there's no way to count them all.
Right.
And so just being able to stay and persevere and be just determined to succeed no matter what is just a core value that we've had.
Absolutely.
What really drove that team was the year before when we had gone up to the Federation and had that bookkeeping era that accidentally put a timeout on our side as opposed to our opponents, and then we wound up with a improper technical at the end, which lost us this dramatic game and was just so devastating for our team.
Yes.
And how did we respond to that? We could have just said, gosh, we just can't get over the hump. We're just so, we're going to wallow in our sorrow of that. But I think credit to the guys, and hopefully it was part of our program culture. They said, nope, we're coming back and we're fixing this. And we're not
Yes.
going to leave it up to a one possession thing this time.
Right. It's a blowout.
And that's what we did.
Yeah.
And so that resilient mindset, I think for me, teaching these guys is going to help them so much, not just in their career, but obviously in life as well.
Yeah, mind, body, and spirit. And that's something that, again, with that special team, it was the first time I was able to experience the LuHi culture. And I mean, it was like they were floating out there.
Yeah.
They would come back, and it was the first time that they had been on the court since working with us. And I just remember the guys looking over, like, Coach, it's working. I'm not tired at all.
Yeah.
I can play another game. Like,
No
after
doubt.
the game, they're up by 20. They're like, we could stay out here for another 2 hours and
Special.
we're good.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of that, there's some confidence built in, but, what they had done, the new programming that we had instilled a little bit in their physical,
Sure.
but it was mostly the mental side of the game. The reminders of, hey, breathe, lower your heart rate, be the lowest heart rate in the room is how you make better decisions as a leader, right? And so same thing on the court. And the way that the mind and the body work together is just it's so important, but sometimes it's really hard to unlock that. How do I connect these two?
Right.
But you covered a lot. I have a bunch of questions that I think you kind of answered a lot of them. The essentially like the non-negotiables of building a culture. The things that a lot of the times it's easier for us to point out what's not good, what we don't want, what we're looking to avoid versus what we want. And when you start to eliminate those things and being selective in the people that you add to the community and to the culture, and I think that that's something that, when you're talking about, building these teams, it's a lot, juggling a lot of egos.
Sure.
You're juggling a lot of talents, you're juggling a lot of, there's so many things, obviously, the interrelationships between the players, the coaches, and tell me a little bit about, obviously there's the coaching some of the best athletes that we can kind of get to some of the stories. But tell me about the difference between leading young men and leading your coaching staff.
Sure.
What are some of the things that you find you're either doing the same, and what are some of the things you have to relate differently?
Yeah. For whatever reason in culture, we think a lot of times your education and growth is when you're up to 18 or 21 and now you're an adult and now you're untouchable. I mean, the minute you think that, you've lost me.
Yeah.
Because I need to self-evaluate all the time. That behavior wasn't in line with what it needs to be. I need to think about how I address this. How can I learn? How can I grow? And so when I can't run this program, I would never have been anywhere without assistant coaches throughout the year. The
100%.
Ones who are still with me, the ones who are, have worked in the past and have gone on to do other things, never could have done it alone. I have a certain skill set and role, but that's not enough to really encapsulate and wrap around, these young men to give them what they need. And so I would say trying to find that balance of allowing people to be who they are, but still operate within the culture of the program.
Yes.
And that's easier said than done. You need to kind of learn through trial and error a little bit. But I would say one of the things that I know we've talked about is if you ignore it, you allow it. And so just kind of sensing behaviors or things from players or adults that you just know are not in line with championship level or excellence or the core values, and you just choose to not address it.
The head in the sand mentality as a leader.
Yeah.
If I don't see it, it doesn't happen.
Right.
It's happening.
Yeah, we want to, and the reason is we're humans. We only have so much emotional energy to give. And it's real that, it's hard to give it every single day. And there's a time and place. But just learning, the longer you don't address something, it's not getting better. It's only hurting the whole picture. And if you address people in a caring way but direct, I think that's one of the greatest skills you can find as a leader.
Yes.
A lot of people aren't afraid to address it, but they don't really communicate that at the root of it, there's a care for that person.
And I think it's sometimes, I find myself, I lead through empathy. So sometimes empathy doesn't always hold people accountable, because all you're doing is saying, I feel you, I see your point. But it doesn't always take that next step in saying, but I need you to focus.
Yeah.
I need you to, really do what you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
Right? Whether that's I'm talking with my coaching staff, here at AMP, or I'm talking to a client. They can come up with all the excuses in the world, and you could say, hey, you know what? Those are all legitimate. Those are all legitimate excuses. You didn't get sleep last night, or, you didn't feel so good when you woke up in the morning, or, something happened, you couldn't make it to the gym, or whatever it might be. It's like, all right, so now what?
Yeah.
What are we going to do with that? And are you going to just allow yourself to not come through on your word and show up the way that you can? And I think that's, I've recently heard a really good quote in saying that you don't necessarily want to be an empathetic leader. You want to be a compassionate leader. So that means you understand where you're coming from, but then you hold accountable at the same time. So and I think that's the balance that you and I probably both struggle with in our leadership style, that makes it almost at times feel out of character. But then when you do it, you're like, that's what I need to do more of.
Right.
Because we both need to hold ourselves accountable. Again, first as a leader, you got to lead yourself.
Right.
Lead by example. And then you can stand with a foundation of, hey, I know that it's tough, but that's when you have to bear down. And that's when you have to really work a little bit harder.
I think Radical Candor calls it ruinous empathy.
Yes, and that was one of the first books that you recommended, and that was one of the best books that I've read on leadership.
Yep.
And it's even just, the overarching idea of the book is having these conversations that are tough, and being able to speak with, when you sit down and you know what you want to do, that dream, you know what it looks like, but then when you're faced with someone that's out of alignment with that, it's really difficult to come down hard or hard enough for the point to come across. And when you speak in like generalities, it's like, well, it's not exactly what I wanted. It's like, I get what you're coming from, but it's like, can you just say, hey, listen, we got to reset.
Yeah. And that seems, for me, it's always been easier with students than with adults, right? I think
100%.
There's just an understanding of, hey, you're my coach.
Yes.
Teach me.
Yes.
And then when you're leading other adults, you have to find the right way to give the proper level of respect to another adult,
100%.
but not run from the things that, again, they've agreed to be on your team.
Yes.
And so if they've done that, they need to give you the permission to hold them accountable. And I think it's actually a very powerful thing to just say, will you give me permission to hold you accountable? And then it's no, and this obviously won't work, or yes, and then it's thank you, because that's going to help us both grow.
100%.
And I think just making that very clear has helped me grow from a pretty good program to now being pretty elite.
And I think that, the fact that you already had those core values, but then when you were able to define them, you sat down at like the perfect time.
Yeah.
That was when all of the juices were starting to come together and create this magic that I've been able to experience and see and grow with you guys in the years prior to COVID and then after COVID, being able to take the team to that next level of now being an actual national powerhouse, competing for a national title, and going to the Geico Nationals, going to the now Chipotle Nationals. Not sure what they're going to call it this year, but it's every year now. That is not a given.
No.
But that is an opportunity and something that, when you talk about your core values, I think of a few guys that come to mind. More recently, VJ Edgecombe.
Yeah.
And I think that, those 5 words, I don't think I've ever seen an athlete that at that talent level had so much maturity and humility. But also, like, I remember stepping foot on the court the first day that he was at practice, and I was standing next to you. I go, what's that? He floated. I couldn't believe how athletic he was, and I don't think anybody really truly understood what we had gotten. Is it Bahamas? He's originally from the Bahamas. So at the time, I don't think many people knew how good VJ was. No. But can you talk a little bit about, working with someone like that, and I think we have, a couple different story paths, but one of them is someone that comes in and just plugs right into the culture and is able to take it to the next level, and how special that can be. And now we know, he's going into his rookie year, and I think he's going to do amazingly. But back then, when he was in, I think, 11th grade, junior year, tell us a little bit about that experience and the joy of being able to coach somebody like that. Yeah,
still pretty surreal just to, go to the draft. And he actually surprised us with a visit last week. I heard his voice outside my door, and
That's
I was
awesome.
like, oh my gosh. Didn't think I'd get to see him before the year started, but he had an early practice and just drove up from Philly, which is nice that he's not that far away.
Unbelievable.
VJ has just an amazing athletic gift, and it's not just the physical, it's the mental.
Yes.
Physical is tremendous, but he has a great blend of humility and supreme confidence, passion, undeniable. The bigger the game, the better he'd play. Just a guy who leans into the moment. Couldn't say that I predicted this level of success that fast when he first came, because what some people might not know is junior year was his first year of high school basketball.
Right.
In the Bahamas, they had kind of shut down from
completely
COVID.
unknown. Yeah.
It was completely unknown. And I think, honestly, that helped him because he was so driven when he came here and had not been fed the, you're so great, you're ranked this, that. He really came in with an edge. And, VJ is a guy who just continues to grow. Just hearing how he's assimilated into the Sixers roster and how he's not satisfied, doesn't surprise me at all. He's just a tremendous competitor. I remember early in his career, there was a practice when, we're trying to see who's really going to war and who's ready to fight and be in these big games. And I said, just outright, I said, guys, if I'm going to war, I know I'm taking VJ with me.
Yeah.
And he said once he heard that was another click of confidence. That's like, all right, coach said that. Now I'm here for it. And he just stepped into the opportunity. You didn't have to tell him twice. He just ran right into it. He's got so much fire inside of him that's just impossible to really teach.
Right.
That level of it, at least. And then when you combine just the natural ability to float through the air, glide, sense spacing, attack, chase the rebound, know where it's going before everyone else. He just has all these intangibles. The instincts are elite.
Incredible. And also just like when I talk about the person, he's somebody that every time, we could talk about his athleticism, but the respect level.
Yeah.
That coming from a different culture, into the United States, and I know he spent some time in the U.S. prior to that, but there was just something about him that was just like he was part of our family right away.
Yeah.
And that's tough, especially for someone coming from a different environment, and the way that he was able to step right into that leadership role. He Player of the Year, right? Was it junior year?
Player of the year, junior year.
Yeah.
Yep.
In a league with Cooper Flagg, so we're talking, that's when we were all just like, okay, and the stats obviously backed it up, but that wasn't the whole story with VJ. And I think, we were hopefully instrumental in helping him build his body up. I think, he was one of the guys, he put on 15 pounds.
15 pounds.
In the off season and through the season.
Yep. In his first year with us.
It was, that was something that, again, just a dedication or just a, just shows how important consistency and dedicating yourself in the gym really is. And the way you do some things is the way you do all things. And he was just a pure example of that. That was just crazy when we saw that.
And I know we've had a few guys now make the NBA. And the common theme with Ryan Dunn, Tyson Etienne, VJ Edgecombe, is that consistency.
100%.
And I don't know how much of that is just innately part of who they are and how they're wired versus taught and learned, but I know it can be improved. It is a skill.
Yes.
And those guys, relentless competitors and just super consistent. It wasn't like, I wonder if they're going to come work at practice today. You knew what you were getting, and just the compounding effect of that, it shows.
100%. Yeah, the compounding effect is something that you don't always apply to culture, and you don't always apply to athleticism. But
we apply it to finance.
Yes.
We can understand a bank account and investment compounding. But when we think about LuHi we're the only program that's been top 5 for the past 3 years in the country.
Right.
All the academies, all
incredible,
all over the place. And I feel like because of the compounding effect of what we've been able to build, it's almost a little hard to catch up in some ways. Now, we got to keep going. The minute we take our foot off the gas and get 1% worse instead of better, we're vulnerable.
Right.
But seeing that compounding effect on culture, it's hard to describe what it really gets you over time.
Yes.
I think I'm the longest tenured coach in the league now. By God's grace, I've just been able to be at LuHi for that long as other coaches have done things. And that I just think it matters.
Right.
It just shows what can happen consistently, day, year, week, over throughout
yes,
time.
And especially guys that are able to spend more time in the program, more than just the 1 year. And I think that, you guys were preparing for this day 10 years ago.
Yeah.
As a program, as a school, way back, further than that, when you were in school,
Sure.
At LuHi. But another guy that you brought up, and I know that, he's someone that I've been able to work with all the way back when he was in, I think, 7th grade.
Young
so
kid.
Ryan
Yeah.
Dunn. Ryan Dunn is one of our hometown heroes. He's someone that I always bring up in conversation when we're talking to a new client. I started working with him, and we just recorded a podcast talking about families.
Yeah.
So I started working with his older brother, when he was in middle school.
Right.
Way back in 2010, before I started AMP, his name is Justin Dunn, and he's spent some time in the major leagues. He's had a great career in his own right. Ryan was just the little brother that came along for workouts, and we both know Ed, and we've had time to spend with him, and he's one of those crazy parent or athlete parents that just happen to be correct. Mm-hmm. He's got 2 professional athlete sons, one in baseball, one in basketball, and when he told me that Ryan was next, I looked at Ryan and I said, no way. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
He was about 95 pounds soaking wet, 6 foot tall, skinny as anything. And, he was, Justin's younger brother, and I was working with Justin throughout his career, especially when he came over and got drafted by the Mets, and, preparing him for the next level, preparing him for, his move when he went to Seattle. And Ryan was always there. Ryan was always either in the background or working alongside him. And it was someone that we both knew, we both came to know over time. And tell me a little bit about his transformation, because if there's anyone that's transformed more in my career, I don't know who it is. Ryan is somebody that when we look at, like you said, the core values, the consistency, the day in, day out nature of how he developed, the compounding nature of his development is incredible.
Yes.
Because I remember our conversations when he had first came to LuHi. What was your thought on Ryan when he had first walked in your door, talking about coming to LuHi to play?
We had to be very honest and say, kind of where you're at right now, we want to be very realistic about playing time. You're just not really there right now. And his junior year of high school, he saw very, sparing minutes.
Right.
We could shoot the ball, so he was able to do that. But just physically, at the level we were playing, it was hard to throw him in to the biggest games. But one time that I'll never forget was during the kind of the year of COVID, 2021. We only played a couple games just because of the logistics of how
Yes, it was a frustrating year.
Very frustrating.
Yeah.
But we practiced consistently. And what he came into the gym with in that mindset and work ethic in all those practices, the wars, the battles that he had with some really good teammates, Andre Pinzone and Kasper Klaczek and Jaden Pierre, Jaden Reed, those guys, he got so much better in that time. And I know even outside of practice, he was working out, finding gyms that were open, like staying after it. And in that year, people develop at different times, just physically, hormonally, all that. I mean, he went from kind of like that baby deer kind of looking athlete into now more of a I'm going to dunk on you athlete.
Yes.
And that just carried over into his prep year, into UVA. And now I'm watching highlights like, this guy's one of the best athletes in the league.
Yeah, probably future All-Star. He already played a year. He already played in that the rookie game, All-Star game, that was able to go up against all the NBA talent.
Just super proud of him. Just blocks out the noise. Just stayed after it. Really humble kid. Couldn't happen to just like a better person for all this, and I just wish him all the continued success in the world.
Absolutely. And you talk about, support system and family. I talk about, I jokingly say Ed is crazy. He is a little crazy, but
you got to be a little crazy to make it in this world. Yeah.
The power of belief in someone else. And I think that both in Justin and in Ryan, Ed's belief in them is apparent, and his support, right? The sacrifices that Ed and Ryan and Justin's mom had made throughout the years to, be at the court at any time, seek out people like myself and yourself and put him in positions that he was uncomfortable.
Yep.
He was playing way above his head in some scenarios. But Ed was always there showing up and believing in him. And now everyone looks up to him like, oh, he must have always had that.
Yeah.
And obviously things have to come to fruition. The genetics is a big part of it, that he was able to grow into himself physically.
Yes.
But he was in this gym more consistently than anyone over that period of time. Through COVID, with you guys training with us as a team, and then he was on his own training with us. He was one of the pound for pound strongest kids in the gym because he wasn't always the, what is he, 6'8" now, 6'7"
now. Yep.
I pause in saying 6'7" because of what's going on in schools right now. But at the end of the day, he what he's turned into today. If you had told me 10 years ago that was going to be him, I'd say you're crazy.
Yeah,
you're crazy.
It is hard to believe. I can't say I've seen a transformation quite like his.
No, unbelievable. And I think his mindset and his consistency and his talk about being humble and respectful, having resilience. He went through injuries.
That's right.
Injuries are one of the things that usually hold back some of the best athletes that I've ever played with. I've always called college sports a game of survival. Who's going to stay focused and not get in trouble? Who's going to stay healthy?
Right.
Who's going to continue to develop? Who's going to not be discouraged by all of those roadblocks that life puts in front of us? And as coaches, we probably succumb to a lot of those things, which a lot of them are, some of the injuries you can't necessarily come back from.
Sure.
Maybe not back then, or maybe today you could. But again, that's our goal, is to be the support for these athletes and to be the best version of ourselves so that we can help them become the best version of themselves, with providing the right type of training advice. He's somebody, again, I sat with him time and time again talking about nutrition. How do I put on weight? And we sat in this room, this specific room, with mom and dad and brother, and we're talking about, this is the stuff you need to have in your pantry. This is how much protein you need to eat. And he was the one athlete that I can pick out of all of them, and there's no surprise that he's in the NBA right now, that was actually following up with me. I didn't have to follow up with him. He was following up with me. Hey, coach, this is what I'm eating for breakfast. What does this look like? Yeah. I'm getting my strength training in at this time. What do you think about fueling at that time? And I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. Like, you have to be a part of the process. You have to be. You talk about passion, right? Passion and obsession are very similar.
Yeah.
Someone that doesn't understand passion might say you're obsessed, but there's a fine line. It's probably one and the same. And I find that the best athletes that we've ever worked with have a little bit of obsession around a baseball player. I remember, watching one of our guys, Kyle Martin, who was a draft pick out of Long Island, and I just watched him with a baseball in his hand, and he was like a fidgety, like always playing with his grips, always playing with something, and I was like, he's obsessed about baseball.
Sure. And
that was when he was in 9th grade, and he wound up getting drafted. So like, there's success leaves clues. There's always some things that you can pick up over time, like, oh, that guy's got it, and there's that level of, almost like they're addicted to it.
Yep.
They're addicted to whether it's the sport or progress or competition. And I think it brings the best out of people. And
that's how you compound.
Absolutely. And again, going back to that, that selective nature of on day one, knowing that this is the right person. I think that Ryan is somebody that benefited tremendously from the culture that was already instilled. Not to say that he was someone that would go in the wrong direction, but the confidence was built over time with Ryan. If it wasn't for the community that he was a part of over here at LuHi, and I kind of like begged Ed to stay on Long Island, because at the time they were looking at schools all over the place. And I was like, listen, man, I think we can bring a lot to the table on the strength training side. I think Coach Buck is an amazing leader. I think that's an amazing program to be a part of. And even at the time, that wasn't you guys weren't the powerhouse that you became.
Right.
And obviously, we weren't able to see that play out at LuHi because of the COVID years. But again, to just go back and see what he's been able to accomplish, and just the humble nature. He comes here just like VJ, popped in the other day at LuHi. Ryan, it's one of his first stops. Yeah. Got to check in at AMP, see what they're doing, and say hi, and just be present. And the people that it's funny to know that little kid that I saw 10 years ago to now, flash forward to today. When people look up to him, and that's somebody that you should be looking up to.
No
that's
doubt.
someone that blinders on, worked his ass off, and everything that he's accomplished, he's earned. Because at every level he was doubted.
Yep.
That's what I always text him.
Yep.
I was like, man, I even doubted you.
Yeah.
And I got to admit that. When your dad told me you're going to be the NBA guy, I was like, that's crazy. But he keeps doubting. He keeps proving the doubters wrong, and keeps working. And man, it's only sky's the limit with him.
Really cool.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And to see him and VJ and Tyson, all on the court together. And one day there's probably going to be
we got a few more in the wings too.
There's going to be a whole crop of guys that are playing on TV, and now we've got a bunch of guys in Division I, that I'm watching on a daily basis as well. I remember one day we were at a restaurant and there's 3 TVs on, and there were 3 LuHi guys, one on each TV.
Yeah, and
that's like, people are looking at me, they're like, "No, you're kidding, right?"
Yeah, it's getting kind of comical in some ways.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's really incredible.
Yeah, just
tell us a little bit about that. Like, obviously you've been coaching now at LuHi for how long?
My first year was 2010 as head coach, and I was an assistant for 3 years before that. So I believe this is head coach year number 16 and 19 overall.
Wow.
It actually might be 17 and 20. I had done the math on that, but it's been the almost half my life and my entire kind of professional career.
Yeah, and having now you're kind of like all eyes on you, all eyes on the program, and even just talking about like the progress of Long Island Lutheran in general, like. Tell me a little. I know that you're super excited about some of the development going up on campus and some of the programs and building that's happening. Is there anything that you can share with that process and what you guys have already kind of built? You were able to show me the other day, just seeing that in your eyes, like seeing the how proud you were of how far the campus has come and how much better the school and the experience as a student has become over time. And again, not only focusing on the athletic side, but the culture side and the school, is that seeing that grow in leaps and bounds is incredible.
There's no doubt. I mean, I always tell people this is a school with a basketball program, not vice versa, right? And so, as a graduate of LuHi, it is very important to me to make sure the whole organization is moving forward in a healthy way. No shock that private school is not an easy business here on Long Island. There are a lot of different options. There's public schools that are really highly regarded. You need to really be, thinking strategically, adding value to families that are paying, high property taxes to say, that's worth it for me to send my son or daughter to private school. And so you were part of that strategic planning process that we did in 2019. We did interviews. We had that 2-day conference. We were taking all this data to say, what does LuHi need to do to evolve and become the best in the next 5 years?
Yes.
And so from that conference, we adjusted our marketing, to which last year we had a 40-year high of new student enrollment. We adjusted our we reviewed our whole campus and the spaces within it, and we developed a campus vision in the buildings and grounds, and we did our first major project, which was renovating the 30,000 square foot classroom wing. And so now what felt like kind of a 65-year-old tired building now feels like a college level high academic learning space. I think it's the best one in the state.
Yeah.
I've been all over the place. And so that space, just transformational. The enrollment as the school is continuing to grow. We're continuing to evaluate opportunities that exist throughout Long Island. It's just exciting. And I kind of take the same mentality of coaching the team to the head of school role. It's really a lot of the same principles. It's, setting the core values that school has its own ones. It has its own vision, mission, putting the right people around you, getting fantastic people, and then being able to build from there. That's really kind of what it takes and what we're really excited to have done and continue to do to offer to the greater Long Island community and even beyond. We have, about 10% of the student body is international. And so I'm actually traveling to China in a few weeks.
That's awesome.
Going to be over there doing some networking. And, it's just such a blessing to be at this small school with such a wide impact, whether it be in the sports or beyond. Such
a beautiful campus. Yep. Just like you get that same feeling that I had with when you guys came to our environment. When I go over there, you just welcome with open arms. They see the AMP logo. They recognize, that collaboration that we've had over the years. And I think, that's something that we're continually working on growing together as well.
Yeah.
I think that our job is obviously to bring you guys the best training, advice, and service possible. And we are just the guide in the process, right? Like the athletes themselves have to be the ones that bring the work ethic, and we are just the framework that we can come in. We can make suggestions. Obviously, we're now working. Coach Garrett and Coach Hannah are there, and Coach Nick. Our entire staff is a part of it. Coach Brandon and Coach John as well.
Yep.
And that's like almost like a benefit of working with AMP. Honestly, it's like it's something that gives us energy versus the opposite. And I think that, the ability for us to work with you guys, again, not only the fact that you're the best team and the best athletes, in the state, let alone the area, just the people, and I think that the effect of working within that type of a environment, it brings us joy and value as well. Can you, can you explain a little bit about some of the things that you've noticed since working with AMP? Like, what are some of the things that you've noticed that have changed in your athletes and in the teams that work with us? Some of the things that maybe we don't even know, impacts that we might be able to make on them.
No doubt. I mean, obviously, just want to give a shout out to Coach Rady over there in the girls program. One of, if not the best coach in the country on the girls' side. She works relentlessly. What she's been able to do with our girls is just fantastic, and it's great to have AMP working, with the girls on that side. I see the benefits. Those girls are strong. They're fast. When they play other teams, obviously those girls are gifted, but there's an edge there too.
100%.
And so, really being able to work with AMP is just kind of, to me, it's the people and the science that kind of stand out. You've just put great people around you. And so whether it be Garrett, yourself, Nick, John, like Brent, anyone who we've worked with, I am confident and I trust that they are going to take care of and guide our student athletes. I don't just trust anyone. And so the quality of people at AMP has always stuck out to me in a world where you can't always trust that. I think you really want to seek out the good people. And then I just trust the programming and the science, whether it be the breathing, the nutrition, advice. I mean, VJ, I don't know if he loved him. He won't go without his coconut water. Like that was always a must as soon as we got to a place. And so just trusting the programming, the science, it works. Not just from the strength, but also that injury prevention mobility piece as well. Basketball players sitting down in planes, desks, needing to make sure we stay flexible has been just something that I really love. And I think our guys, when they sense I'm open to trusting experts and I don't know it all, and that I can give AMP kind of the open door to say, hey, help us in this, I think shows the level of trust that they need to have for each other. And just that whole collaborative spirit, I think, has just played out so well over the years. I'm super, super thankful for the relationship.
Absolutely. Same here. And I think, that's always been our goal, is to be collaborative and understand, we may not know everything, especially if we have a plan for the day and your guys just made it through a tough weekend of travel and playing and practice. We might have to adjust on the fly. And if we're not open to that, then it's just not going to work. But, resilience is only built through, and physical resilience, obviously there's a mental side, but built through working hard, and having that level of consistency and that foundation that we're able to work with you guys early on before the season starts, build up that physical resilience. And I know that you're practicing very hard, starting, as soon as, I'm not sure, when do you guys start the harder practices?
We get in the gym early in the year, right? As soon as school begins.
Right. So, being able to build that underlying level of resilience so that, the saying is, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. So the guys are ready to go once the season starts. And that's our number one goal, is that they are as prepared physically. We can't, stop everything from happening, any injury or things like that, but we can build resilience to make the likelihood of that happening much less.
Certainly.
And that's essentially what our goal is. And, to let your guys, just consistently get there and show off their athleticism and do what they, react without thinking. And sometimes that is the confidence factor right there. Just by being physically prepared, the mental side comes right after that. So, but I would say, we'll wrap things up. I know you have, another busy schedule to get back to, and that's always something that is incredible about you, is being able to balance everything that you have on your day-to-day plate, being the family man that you are, being the coach and mentor that you are, and being the head of schools. And it's incredible. I look at my day, I'm like, man, I didn't accomplish as much as Coach Buck did today. But
we all think that about other leaders, right?
Absolutely. But again, you've built something incredible, and the partnership that we've had has just continued to grow, and I look forward to the next 10 years and working together and consistently building that LuHi legacy that you have built and put on a pedestal that no one's as long as you're there, and as long as those core values are instilled in the team, I think it's an absolute just example of how important culture is. And as that culture is built, that's when the talent will find you. That's when the athletes, for you and for us, it's the coaching staff, when it's known what AMP is building here and what we've built. But we won't attract the right people if we're not also explaining that and putting that out there. So I appreciate you coming today and us being able to kind of talk about, the thing that makes LuHi special, and I think the thing that makes AMP special, and the fact that we're able to work together in so many ways and continue to work together, and hopefully, in the future we're able to do things that neither of us thought were possible. Because I think if we sat down 7 years ago and talked about what we've been able to accomplish together today, we wouldn't have thought of all these things. We wouldn't have said how many guys are in the NBA and how many guys probably will be in the NBA one day. And we were able to kind of tell some stories. And I think hopefully those of you out there listening and watching were inspired by some of the stories that we told today, and now have a better understanding and a deeper understanding of how important leadership is, not only as a coach, but as someone in business, someone in the school programs to mentor and to lead others is not an easy thing. But everyone can be a leader in their own right. And it starts with yourself, and having those everyday practices that we obviously teach here at AMP about training and nutrition. Mindset goes right hand in hand with that. So I thank you, and I again, it's like a family here, and it's something that we hold true, and we appreciate everything that we've been able to work on together, and many, many more.
Yeah, it's been 7 years that have gone pretty fast, honestly.
Absolutely.
And I would just say the alignment that you kind of described has made it feel seamless and easy. I know if there's ever an issue, we can talk, pick up the phone, and figure it out. Yeah. But those don't happen too often because of the alignment. So thanks for having me. Encourage everyone out there to don't let the bad days hang with you too long. I like to leave everyone with a kind of a little mantra I've picked up, and it's been super healthy. When you have a negative emotion, don't leave your hand on the stove. Physically, if you put your hand on a hot stove, you'd pull it away right away. But I think I've learned through just some training I've had, mentally we have a negative emotion and we just leave our hand on the stove.
Yes.
And we let it eat and eat and eat at us. And I just encourage us, take the impulse of whatever you're being taught, whether it's disappointment or anger or whatever it is, and then try to get off it and just get creative and curious about what those next steps are. That's going to help you move forward in life instead of spinning your wheels.
100%. Very well said. And I think sometimes you need those people in your corner, if you find yourself in that funk, sometimes you'll get a phone call from me.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I got to talk to you about something.
Yep.
And I've had those pull up to the driveway moments of like, I need to talk to somebody about what I'm going through.
Sure.
Because having those people in your corner, really, really important. And I
So
appreciate
important.
You being that for me and so many others.
Yep.
And again, reminding people that, that when you're feeling that way, when you're feeling like you can't get over something, get on the phone with somebody, or even for yourself, understanding that go out and help somebody. Go out and, get yourself out of that funk.
Yeah.
What can you focus on that's positive? Getting that negative, self-talk and that spiral can be so toxic.
Yeah, it can take you away from all your vision, dreams, everything, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
So I just really like to encourage people in that, try to really control those negative emotions, get off the stove as fast as you can, and get into the creative space.
Thank you so much.